Hey, this is Daphne here, and I want to address a question that someone asked me about what is it that seems to be like we work so hard right before we go on vacation, and yet we don't do that any other time. And why don't we just work like that all the time? Well, I wanted to address that question today, and I wanted to talk about it from a few different perspectives. First of all, I don't know the why about anything that people do, but I will say this much. When you find yourself, wanting to get caught up on things right before you leave for vacation, I think there's a real intention for most people to just feel caught up, to not leave things hanging, right? To not leave things hanging out of there. Now, some of that could be motivated by not wanting to be bothered when we're on vacation, which is a great motivation. Also, though, I think there's something deeper. And I think if we can tap into this, I think we can find that we could be more effective for longer in our work and have a little bit more ease. And here's the thing that I think is underneath it. We want to feel a sense of completion about things. It's kind of like if you're going away for a while, you want to feel like, oh, I got some things handled. And if we can tap into that, just this ease that we want, this desire that we have to live in completion with things, I think that we could be more effective in our roles and have our work life be more effective, and that we could get a lot more done with a lot less stress if we can live that way, a good majority of the time. Now, not all the time, right? Sometimes we don't live in completion all the time. But I think what we start to tap into here is this part of us that wants to feel like I've finished projects, I've brought things all the way through, I've gotten things, checked off the list, right, with these basic tasks that we have as well as big projects. And so if we can tap into that a little bit more just in our day-to-day lives and take it more from a place of wanting to have a sense of completion around things and live a life of completion, we could be a lot more effective. And we would get more things done in less time and have a sense of just feeling a little bit more ease in our life. Now, I want to tell you, I have a practice that I learned from dear friends of mine about living in completion. And I do my best during the day to live in completion, the weeks, the months. And every year I hit the pause button and take 3 or 4 days to go, what do I need to bring to completion before the end of the year? And it's super fun. Everything, I go through my house, I go through my clothes, I make a list of things that I want to give away, a list of things that need to be just removed, that are no longer working. I take time to maybe do some of these big things that didn't get done that I had on my list, like fixing things in the house or mailing things that needed to get mailed, all those sorts of things. And taking care of that stuff before the end of the year. But there's also the practice of doing that as best you can every day that allows you to have a sense of just calm. So, can we find underneath that thing that we do right before we go on vacation, can we find the true intention and motivation around that? And here's the deal, when we live like that in our days and our weeks, we're also less bothered because people aren't pinging us and waiting for things and wanting to get things from us. We actually just get it to them when they need it, and that feels really good too. So we don't have to reserve vacation time to live in completion. And that's what I think starts to happen. And we just sort of use getting ready to go on vacation as sort of the impetus, the pressure to get those things done. But if we live at that same urgency, we actually can feel a little bit better about it too. Now, does this have a business case? Well, here's the really interesting thing. Just recently, a report was released from a company out of New Zealand, and they put everybody on a 4-day work week. They're still paying them, by the way. They're still paying them full time. Now, it's only been an experiment. It was like a 3-month experiment. But what they found was that people were just as productive as if they would be if they had 5 days worth of work. And I think this is sort of telling, right? It's sort of like, oh, it's that same sense of, maybe we could call it a sense of urgency. Maybe we could say a lot of things about it, I think, in terms of looking at why that sort of happens. And there's been indications of this all along. They look at how effective we can be over a certain amount of time. The average is 4 to 6 hours anyway, keeping our attention and working on projects that we really give our best work. And so maybe that's really what they're seeing here, that there is this sort of wasted time. I also think that is sort of that, like, oh, I'm focused and I only have this much space, so I'm just going to get more done. And I think that's also knowing that we're leaving for vacation. I think that's also what this idea of vacation does for us too. I only have this much time and I've got to get these things done. So we can look at it from that perspective. I'm a fan of definitely living in completion as best we can in every moment. And I think that's really what drives a lot of this. And there's a business case for that as well. Right now, there's always going to be opportunity. There's always going to be things on the list. That's just what we do as successful humans, as people who want to be successful in our lives. We give ourselves all these great opportunities, right? All these amazing things that we can put on our list that we say yes to. Nevertheless, I think keeping ourselves really in the mode of like, what is it for me to live in completion and live in a state of completion, I think is really the question. And what's the motivation behind it? What's the intention? How do I feel when I'm committing myself to living in a state of completion? So you give it a try. Let me know what you think. But I think this is really what's behind this. And if we can give ourselves that permission to live in a state of completion more often, I think we'll just be a little bit more joyful in our work. I don't know. That seems to be what's true for me, but I'd love to hear from you. More messages come in the future.